User stories are one of the biggest innovations we've seen in a long time in the software industry. They let us gather requirements faster, more accurately, while avoiding one of the greatest sources of waste we see today in software projects, premature analysis. In this episode, I'm going to show you what user stories are, how to write good ones, and share some practices to help you get the right ones for your project. Agile user stories are short descriptions of features our customers would like to one day see in their software. They're usually written on small index cards, encourage the deferring of detail until just before the feature is required, and reinforce one of the key principles of Agile delivery, and that is face-to-face communication is the best way to communicate among team members on projects. Now you may be wondering how an index card could possibly replace all the extensive documentation we traditionally see used to gather requirements. Well, before the internet, before Moore's Law put a computer on every desktop, the cost of change on software projects used to be very high. A bug caught during the requirements phase of the project was easier and way cheaper to fix than catching it just before going into production. So a lot of emphasis was put on getting the requirements right up front and then driving or resisting all forms of change for the rest of the project. Now that worked pretty good for about 40 years, but then something strange started to happen. The cost of change started to flatten. Making changes was no longer super expensive. Iterative development started to become possible, and for the first time, customers could change their minds and not have to pay an exorbitant amount. This changed everything. Now, instead of having to write piles of requirement stocks that quickly went out of date, customers could steer, discover, and give feedback about their products as they were being built. It was revolutionary. Now, there's lots of reasons for favoring user stories over relying on the written spec, but it mostly comes down to speed, feedback, and reacting better to what the customer wants. All right, let's shift gears now and take a look at what makes a great user story. The first thing to know about writing a great user story is this concept of slicing stories end to end. Let me ask you this. How much value do you think I've delivered if I just build you, say, a beautiful screen? Or what if I don't give you the screen, but instead give you the perfect business logic behind the screens? Or what if I don't give you the screen or the business logic, but instead build you the perfect backend with the most beautiful database design? If you said no value, you'd be correct. These architectural layers, while important, deliver absolutely no value to the customer themselves. Why? Because they can't do anything. It's only when we deliver features, slicing through all layers of the architecture, that we deliver something of value, something we could deploy. So when gathering user stories for your customer, shoot for thin slices of functionality that go end to end through the system and deliver value to your customer. We call this slicing the cake. Now there's a nice acronym Bill Waite created representing some of the characteristics we like to see in good user stories. Independent means treating our user stories as if there was no dependence between them. Now we don't always get this in practice. You need data before you can do reporting. But in many cases, treating stories as if they were independent helps our customers plan and prioritize. So when gathering, try to shoot for independence. Negotiable stories are nice because they give our customers some flexibility on time and budget. We may really want the expensive all-out Ferrari version for any given feature, but we may only be able to afford the cheaper one. Negotiable gives us some room to maneuver when executing and ensures we're working within the means of our projects while giving our customers the greatest bang for their buck. Valuable. Now this is something we obviously want to deliver, but if you have a technical background, you may be tempted to write some things in very technical mumbo-jumbo ways that your customer may not understand. Don't do it. When writing user stories, stick to terms and words that demonstrate the value of what you're delivering to your customer and avoid the technical mumbo-jumbo. This will keep your customers engaged and enable them to prioritize. Estimable stories are ones that we like to be small, that we can size. Small is nice because it's something that's great for planning, tasking, and prioritizing. And we really like our stories to be testable because if our customers can describe what success looks like for a given story, then we'll know when we're done. Now, what about all the other stuff we sometimes need to do on projects? Well, these can be stories too. Remember, these are just guidelines. If you have something that needs to be done, but it doesn't perfectly match the textbook definition of a story, don't worry about it. Just create it. Throw it in the project to-do list and treat it like any other deliverable. Remember, the goal here isn't to write perfect user stories. It's to build great products and get happy customers. If there's something you need to do, write it down on a card and just do it. The cards are there to serve you, not the other way around. All right. Now that you know what user stories are and characteristics of good ones, let's talk about some ways to go about collecting them for your project, like story gathering workshops. Story gathering workshops are where you and your customer get together, draw lots of pictures, and collectively brainstorm all the things your customer would like to see in their software. Big rooms with lots of whiteboards and flip charts are perfect for this sort of thing. Now, one great picture to draw as a source of user stories is a flowchart. The simple flowchart of the process you're trying to model is a great way to identify and extract stories for your project. Simply walk the flowchart, look for discrete pieces of functionality, and write the stories as you see them. Another good source for stories are paper prototypes and mockups. Simply draw the screens of the application you're trying to build, and you will see tons of features your customer would like to see in their software. But at the end of the day, stories can really come from anywhere. There's no one way to go about gathering them, so feel free to use any technique you like to find them. At the end of the day, the goal is a high-level overview of your project. The stories you gather here become the beginning of your Agile plan. And in the next episode, we're going to look at how to estimate your user stories and figure out how big your project is. Well, that's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this episode on user stories. If you'd like to learn more, be sure to check out my book, The Agile Samurai, as it's got lots more examples on how to do this stuff. Thanks for coming. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.